Hi, I just want to make a short video response about the video of Fat City, the workshop. Basically, it started off with Richard D. Lavoie. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Richard D. Lavoie. And basically, he has a group of people of like students, I mean, not students, but parents of students with learning disabilities, um, uh, basically different people in the education system that are associated with learning disability. Maybe it's a special ed teacher or whatever the case may be. And he goes into scenarios of explaining to them, kind of put yourself in the situation of being a person with a learning disability. He even reminds them as they're going through the process that you've been a child with a learning disability for such and such amount of time. It's been this amount of minutes. You've been a child with a learning disability. And he gives them different things, puts them into, gives them different examples of stuff that makes them feel like this is what it feels like to have a learning disability. Either, it starts off with the pictures of the the animals, and then he's like, tell me a story that has these animals in it, certain animals, and it's like quickly process through your brain a story. Like, it's so simple. If you were just sitting at home thinking, okay, let me think, is there a story that has a cat in it? Three little kittens. You have time to kind of process that. But in a classroom, once you point to a child and it's like, tell me a story real quick, like, come on. And it's like, give me a minute. I don't know. The child may know this sometimes, but the process, sometimes it takes time for them to process your question in order to come up with the information that you're asking them for. So, he kind of puts them in that scenario through that exercise. And then he explains that, a lot of times kids with learning disabilities don't want to really participate in class because they may be afraid of, being wrong and then being ridiculed, because that's how, people are, and children can be selfish. So that may be the case. It may be like, oh, you don't know or whatever, but sometimes they may know, but they don't want to tell you, because what if they think they know and they really don't, and then they say what they believe the answer may be, and then they are ridiculed because they're like, oh, well, that's not the answer, stupid, why would you even say that, and then that's how sometimes people would be, and that's just the case, and that's how kids feel, and sometimes that's why they won't respond, because it's like, who wants to be ridiculed? um let's see, a visual perception. On that part, basically, he gave them an image without explaining to them what the image was. It was the image of the cow, and it was like, what is that? Tell me what that is. And a lot of people were like, I don't know what that could be. Like, what in the world? What is this thing? It just looks like a dark spot right here and another dark spot right here. But then when he says it's a cow, and then, a lot of people are like, oh, that's right, that's a cow. And then a few of them are still like, I don't see this cow. Like, and then he has to come with this line outlining and kind of put it up to the picture. And they're like, oh, now I see it. It's kind of like, great example of how kids with a learning disability may be. They may take something that you're giving them and expecting, here it is. Why do you not see it for what it is? And it's like, no, sometimes you have to guide somebody into understanding what something is. Sometimes you have to say, do you understand what this is? And they may be like, no, No, so then you have to be like, this is what this is the part of that that's that, and that's the part of that that's that. Because sometimes you can't just hand something to somebody without any explanation whatsoever and just expect them to automatically just know what it is. A lot of people are not like that. Matter of fact, with that picture, I don't think there was anybody, not even me, that knew what that picture was. I was looking at the picture like, what in the world am I? He really made you feel what this child could really feel like. Like, what is that? Does anybody else? Maybe other people know what it is, and I don't know what it is, so I feel foolish. But then you realize nobody else knows what it was because you didn't give me an explanation as to what it could be. And therefore, I'm just seeing basically nothing. Um, then with reading comprehension, um, you know, there are examples of words, and it's like words are words. Cat, it, is, get, go, school, book, right? But then you could put in a sentence. These words you could put in a sentence, and this sentence could be extremely hard to understand. Like, what in the what? I can't give you an example. He gave an example in the video of the words and put them in a phrase where it was really kind of like, unless you were kind of like an engineer, like that guy in the video, like a math, you knew math, then you would know it has to do with math. It's associated with math. Unless that was the case, then you're pretty much like, huh? So this is how, kids with a learning disability, you could have basic words and then put them into a sentence, and then it's like, I don't know what the word means anymore because this sentence is really complicated. And then you see, he gave an example of where there were words that didn't make any sense. Like they were not even actual words. But because of the scenario that he placed the words in, it was like, oh, flippity flop and jibbity job is going swimming in the flip flop floop. It's a familiar situation with words that some words that you know, and the words that you don't know are placed in a way as to where you can understand what it may be. You know. Let's see. Uh, okay, so when a child may perceive something different and their fellow classmates, and misconception may be interpreted as them being disrespectful as. Okay, so another part of the video dealt with basically perceiving something, and a child may perceive something differently from their fellow classmates or whatever. So a lot of times, um, when you say something to a child or give them something, and you ask them for an example of it, or you ask them a question based on it, they may not understand your question, so they give you what they believe you wanted them to, whatever they understood your question to be, and give you whatever answer they felt was, you know necessary for that question. And sometimes it may not be, and then you can't say to this child, no, that wasn't the answer. Like, that wasn't it. You have to, understand that interpretation is key to anything. Like in learning, interpretation is key. So when a child, you say something to them or ask them something, and they just answer you based on how they feel, they you should be, they should answer you. You can't, punish them and be like, well, that was not the answer I was looking for. You have to say, what did you think I was asking? And why did you give me the answer that you gave me? That way you can come to an equal understanding of how this child is thinking. And therefore, you can better teach this child because you have a better understanding of how they're interpreting the information that you're giving them. So, Also, he gave exercise where they had to trace a picture while only looking in the mirror, not looking down at the paper, trace the picture. And sometimes children with learning disabilities have visual motor coordination issues. So they can't write and, listen and stuff like that. And basically that was what he was trying to show an example of, is that writing is also a part of, this disability. Like their visual skill of seeing something and writing it is sometimes interrupted. Uh, then there was also an example of storage and retrieval, where information that's given is sometimes stored and then later retrieved to be given back whenever time that information may be needed. So, a lot of children with a learning disability, he says, may store the information um, and may not be able to retrieve it, or they may store it somewhere where it's not the proper place to store it. And then he also gives an example of starting a story, and basically you just start a story. Tom and John are going to the beach. And then each person says another part of that story in just one sentence. Easy. Story goes on. Then he says, let's try the story again, but your sentence cannot include a word that begins with letter N. And then everybody's like, oh, well, now you got to think about it. Now you got to, when somebody says their part, you got to go in, you got to be like, words without N, put it in the sentence. Now you're, basically he's giving you the difference of cognitive skills over attentive skills. And it's like associative skills, I'm sorry. And basically when you just had to spew out a sentence without any, any kind of rules behind it or whatever case may be, it was easy. But when you had to come up with, okay, not do a sentence, but take out, don't put a word in that has the letter N in it, it got a little bit more difficult. And that's how kids with a learning disability may, that's how they go through things sometimes. They can they can try to explain something, and it's kind of hard because they can't exactly find the proper word and know how to put that word into a sentence to then regurgitate it to the person that they're trying to explain it to. Where was I at here? Okay, so now read. Okay, with reading, children with a learning disability may be given a material to read and then not understand what they have read, and that's or they may have difficulty reading. So he gave, the example where you do the there was like words on the top, and this letter may be a P, a B, a D, or whatever. So you have to figure out what it is. And that's how reading is for a child with a learning disability. It's almost like reading every sentence is almost like the coding, like how everybody was doing in, all the participants were doing in the video. And that's how it feels for a child with a learning disability. First, they have to really try to read this stuff, and it may be difficult. And then after they've read it, it's like, what did I even read? So it's sometimes better to, have like the next thing that he talked about, where it's better for some students to be able to just listen, because they may learn better from just listening. Some can learn better from visual things, and some can learn better from auditory. So if they listen to something, they will better understand it more than just reading it. And then it ends with fairness. Basically, and I love the example that he gave where he says that, you know, if a person in a room with a bunch of people in it should just pass out and need CPR, and you specifically know how to do CPR, you can't be like, oh, I can't give CPR to her because if I give CPR to this person, then I got to give CPR to everybody. But everybody doesn't need CPR. It's just this one lady that fell out on the floor and she's about to die. She's the only one that actually needs it right now. Maybe somebody else will need the CPR later, but this lady needs it right away. And that is, I love that example. Like, that is a perfect example of fairness and giving children what they need, like giving a child what they need as opposed to the same thing that everybody gets. Like, I love that. Perfect example. One person needing CPR doesn't mean you have to give everybody CPR. This person really needs it, and that's why you specifically have to give it to this person. That was just perfect. Perfect example of how you have to treat children with learning disabilities. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody needs the same things. And that's why, for real fairness, is giving these kids the time and attention that they need, or whatever material, whatever they need to get them to keep up with the other kids so everybody can be on equal ground. Fairness is basically equality. Well, no, that's the same. So fairness, like he says, give them what they need. Okay, so that was basically how I understood that video. I wish other people could see it, other people could watch it. So, because it really gave me a complete grasp of what this was all about. Like, I never knew that kids with a learning disability, this is what it felt like. And for a lot of the moments in the video, I felt just like how these kids would feel. I'm like, this is a very unfair feeling. And I completely understand why, these kids need special attention, and everybody should be treated equally. And sometimes some people just need extra help in order to be equal with everybody else. Thank you so much.